High Net Worth, this weekend at these times on CNBC. The following presentation is a paid program. The opinions, views and claims expressed are those of the program's sponsors and may not necessarily reflect those of CNBC.
There have been kings of Thailand since the 13th century, all absolute monarchs, until a bloodless coup in 1932. Their word was law, their lives remote from the public. Since 1946, one king has reigned the Southeast Asian nation and transformed the monarchy to become inseparable from the lives of all Thais. How has this king integrated his life with those of his people for 60 years through periods of great tumult and change in the region and the world? No one imagined that the boy born at Mount Auburn Hospital in Cambridge, Massachusetts, at 8:45 a.m. on the 5th of December 1927, would one day be a king. While born the son of a prince, King Bhumibol was not directly in line to the throne. It is interesting that many of the events that led to His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej, Rama IX, ascending the throne were wholly unforeseen. Named Bhumibol Adulyadej, which perhaps foreshadowing his future destiny, translates as strength of the land, he joined his family as a healthy baby boy. Thailand's reigning monarch at the time of the 1932 coup, which changed the political system, was King Prachadipok, Rama VII. He abdicated on the 2nd of March 1935 without naming a successor. His Royal Highness Prince Anantamahidol was named the next king and was crowned in 1945, but within a year passed away and was succeeded on the 9th of June 1946 by his younger brother, Prince Bhumibol, who became His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej. The new king was 18 years old. King Bhumibol was then studying science in Switzerland, but was to switch to law and political science to assist him in his new and unexpected role. As the royal limousine slowly passed through the crowds that lined the way for his return flight to Switzerland in June 1946, a voice from the crowd suddenly cried out, "Don't forsake the people, Your Majesty." No one expected a reply, yet His Majesty later admitted that he heard it and revealed that he wanted to call back, "If the people do not forsake me, how can I forsake the people?" He never forgot his silent promise. Four years later, King Bhumibol Adulyadej returned to Thailand. As part of the coronation ceremony on the 5th of May 1950, King Bhumibol announced that he would reign with righteousness for the benefit and happiness of the Thai people. However, His Majesty King Bhumibol was to reign over a nation impoverished through years of war and rampant inflation. He began by connecting with his people and with the world at large. From 1959 to 1967, His Majesty King Bhumibol traveled around the world to meet with the leaders of 31 countries and 19 U.S. states. It was often the first time people had heard of Thailand and its monarchy. His Majesty soon left the comfort of the palace and journeyed into the Thai countryside, where the vast majority of people still lived in abject poverty. In 1952, His Majesty took one of his first steps in direct development action. He built a road. By doing this, His Majesty had taken a step toward making the constitutional monarchy really work in all senses of the word. Over a few years, the king constructed a small palace in each region of the country so that he could be close to the people for months at a time, visiting them with his queen so that he could hear their problems firsthand. From 1953 to 1954, their majesties traveled to the provinces in the central region of the country. Not as easy as it is today to journey outside of Bangkok. Many areas lacked basic infrastructure, and the vehicle used by the royal couple followed what were fondly called disco tracks, for the bouncing around they gave the vehicle's occupants. Further expedition into the interior of the country's northeast in 1955, the north in 1956, and the south in 1959 allowed His Majesty to see the problems facing the rural poor. Drought followed flood, followed drought, and a farmer's life was the hardest in the kingdom, but they could do nothing to improve their own lives. The king systematically set about addressing these problems. In 1961, His Majesty conducted agricultural experiments. For instance, developing rice strains that would grow in harsh conditions at his Bangkok residence, Chitlada Villa, a part of Dusit Palace. This eventually formed the basis of the world's first experimental farm, based within a royal residence, whose windmills and farming implements are now Bangkok landmarks. Today, the royal grounds include milk powder production facilities, cheese-making, plant genetic engineering laboratories, aquaculture ponds, and many other experiments directly designed to help the Thai people.
Royal Chitlada project belongs to His Majesty the King. This is his personal money. So this is a way Royal Chitlada project belongs to His Majesty the King. This is his personal money. So this is a way that we learning by doing here and then launching the idea for the people. So some farmers, they can come here to see. And if they need for the starting, they can come here to be trainees. They can work with us and then go back to have their own business at the village. The sample that we have proud to say that His Majesty drive a car in the summer palace now by using the refined palm oil. So this is a way that he also have his personal experiment with the car that we can substitute the palm oil or agricultural oil instead of the diesel that we have a higher price nowadays.
Those days, about 40 years ago, the government officials didn't know what's happening on the highland because there's no road. But His Majesty, he went around the mountain to visit the people by helicopter. And one day, after conversation with them, he realized that apart from opium, there is a fruit that gave them some income, which is nearly the same as opium. And so he founded the Royal Project.
And 40 years ago, we imported lots of fruits, vegetables, and flowers from overseas, Holland, Australia, New Zealand. And when we heard that His Majesty the King started a crop substitution program called the Royal Project, we immediately were excited about this project because we knew that there is something for the Oriental Hotel to be participating in. The chef became an advisor, and over the years he brought many, many seeds from overseas into the project, and we were buying slowly from the slow beginnings, of course, to today they have artichokes, aubergines, peaches, all kind of things, and we would never think of buying anywhere else than from this project.
So when you have the best products, you can make nice dishes, good looking, nourishing dishes, and also very healthy. Especially nowadays, when people go so much into health food, we get all these beautiful products which are not sprayed. You see, because His Majesty the King forbids to spray, because the spray goes into the water, the hilltops have to drink and to use. So the few worms we have, the few flies we have, they are part of nature.
The hill tribes were benefited because they grow the legal crop that produce them a lot of money. And people on the lowland benefit because the destruction of the forests and watershed has been stopped.
The Royal Project in the north helped to turn the hill tribes away from growing opium to substitutes like temperate fruit and vegetables. By 1988, to international acclaim, the Royal Project won the prestigious Majesty Award for international understanding and drew government officials from around the world to observe its work. Six Royal Development Study Centers were set up in different regions as models for local people and those from other countries on how to overcome common agricultural problems. Poor villagers struggled with a lack of water for irrigation, for without water, nothing could be grown. After years of research, the Royal Rainmaking Project had its first trial in July 1969 over the vast Khao Yai National Park using light aircraft. His Majesty continued to provide input about suitable geographical locations, even the chemical formula for the cloud seeding mixture. His Majesty's success in bringing rain was his greatest gift to the poor. Officials from Indonesia, Bangladesh, China, Malaysia, the Philippines, Singapore and Sri Lanka have all traveled to Thailand to learn how to make rain for their own farmers. His Majesty's work on the Royal Rainmaking Project was awarded the gold medal with mention at the Brussels Eureka 2001. His Majesty went on to look at associated irrigation and soil problems, providing the leadership necessary for government organization to coordinate efforts.
Of glacier rain, sunlight streams of the
reforestation of Thailand's tropical rainforests from the 60s to the late 80s moved at a rapacious pace, with millions of hectares of forests being removed per year. Since 1965, His Majesty's reforestation program for watershed development has been responsible for maintaining a balance of Thailand's ecology and replenishing the atmosphere with oxygen to play a part in global environmental measures. The wet forest theory he devised stressed the need to keep the forest moist with water sources. The humidity of forests planted at watersheds would also protect them against natural fires during the dry season and allow farmers downstream to benefit from the supply of natural water all year round.
His Majesty is well known as a water resource development expert. In the case of Chao Phraya River, for example, when we have a bunch of rainfall and the water will not get down to the Bangkok area, and the high tide get up, in mid somewhere. If we have some kind of, I don't know, a reservoir or empty space, to release this surplus of water, we can store it, and it can collect a certain number, a certain quantity of water, and the problem of the flooding become less, and keep the water in the monkey cheek.
The Gambling, or Monkey Cheeks project, alleviated much of the flooding that had once plagued Bangkok. From 1952, a royal train of projects began rolling, and it was to prove unstoppable. Today, there are over 3,000 royally initiated projects, 2,000 of them for water resource development, the lifeblood of farmers. To accomplish his work, His Majesty became the most traveled sovereign ever in Thailand. People say that there is nowhere in the country the king has not visited at some time or another. Moreover, people in rural and remote areas were largely uneducated, as they lived so far from towns. One of His Majesty's earliest projects in 1952 was to build a school, and education became a continuing theme throughout the reign. His Majesty arranged for distance education via satellite, so thousands of people could benefit from the same teachers. He also provides scholarships, not just for primary and secondary education, but also the Anantamahidon Scholarship allows higher education students to study abroad without any ties on the recipients when they return.
The Anantamahidon Scholarship offered me a very good opportunity to pursue my graduate studies abroad. This happened in the year 1976. I was able to obtain my master and doctorate in business administration from Harvard Business School for the very fact that the foundation never imposed any legal obligation as to future employment of these scholars. Also give pride, because it also indicate the importance of self-responsibility. Never impose any legal obligation as to future employment of these scholars. Also give pride, because it also indicate the importance of self-responsibility for these students. It's the lifetime moral obligation rather than the short-term legal obligation. But at the end, the result is more meaningful, because almost everybody who received such scholarship, even with freedom given to them to work for any employers, almost all of them decided to come back to Thailand. They all have one thing in common is the determination to use their knowledge trained abroad to work for the benefit of their country to their fullest capacity.
All of His Majesty's efforts to provide a sustainable way of life for the poor were put to the test in 1997 when the economic crash led to the renewed interest in His Majesty's ideas of a sufficiency economy. It was found remarkable that for years His Majesty had buffered the poorest against any major impact from economic disaster.
Well, the new theory is method for the farmers, how to manage their farm. His Majesty suggests that it's better to divide into a formula of 30, 30, 30, and 10. The first 30%, he suggests to sacrifice this portion of land to dig a pond. And the second 30, sacrifice for the rice field. The rice is the cereal that most of the Thai people eat each day. That's better not to buy it in the market, because His Majesty always mentioned that have enough to eat is the most important in the life of the people. The third part, the 30%, is the last piece that sacrifice for the planting of trees, fruit trees, the hardwood trees, and also fuel. And another 10% is for the construction of the house and so on. Following the method of His Majesty the King, it means that you have everything behind your house. You have fish, you have chicken, you have vegetable, well, you have everything. And the second stage of the new theory that anyhow you must have the rest of the product. You cannot consume all. Now you can collect it and sell it into the market. And this money that you earn after the self-sufficient at the first stage, going a little bit to the market system, you can earn the money for the second stage. You arrive to the third stage now. You can organize yourself into a small group, rice group, cattle groups, and you can earn much more money with a very solid base. That's we call the new theory that's still used all over the country now.
By presenting farmers with a management plan for their land, His Majesty was providing a blueprint that the poor could follow and that would allow them to grow their communities from the inside out. The picture of the king on a hill or in a field with his camera, maps, walkie-talkie, and assorted pens and pencils that many believe epitomizes his typical attire would be incomplete without one of the royal family at his side or close behind. Besides developing the people, His Majesty took on the responsibility of protecting them from danger and suffering. Nature sometimes struck His people with terrifying force, and natural catastrophes demanded immediate action. When a terrible storm struck 12 provinces in the south of Thailand in 1962, there was tremendous loss of life and property that created havoc. His Majesty immediately issued an appeal for donations for food and temporary shelter, and later for reconstruction work. To His Majesty's surprise, donations kept coming in long after they were required, because people knew that under His Majesty's management, the funds would be put to good use. The fund transformed into the Rajapachanukroq Foundation in 1963. In December 2004, when a tsunami hit the south of Thailand, the Rajapachanukroq Foundation was at the forefront of assistance to the devastated areas in the reconstruction process. Scholarships for children who were orphaned by the disaster were also made available. Part of its success lies in the complete faith people have that their donations are managed under His Majesty's authority, and therefore will be used correctly, quickly and decisively. King Bhumibol has developed skills as an artist and photographer, and even spent some time constructing sailboats. However, His Majesty's favorite leisure activity is music. In 1964, his tremendous talent was recognized by the illustrious Academy for Music and the Performing Arts in Vienna, Austria, when he became the first Asian ever chosen to be an honorary member. Also an amateur sailor who often built his own boats, His Majesty won a gold medal for sailing in the Southeast Asian Peninsula Games in 1967. Even today, the King lends moral support to Thai athletes. It is not unusual for medalists to offer their medals to His Majesty, and Thailand's sporting teams are usually seen carrying a picture of their king at events.
Later today, I will have the honor to present the United Nations Development Programme's inaugural Human Development Lifetime Achievement Award.
As the celebrations commence in the 60th year of the reign, everyone who has been touched by the work of His Majesty will look back with awe. Many will find it hard to understand how a monarch could be so close to his people with unlimited devotion to all, whatever their ethnic origin, dialect, religion or politics. Whatever else is said of His Majesty King Bhumibol Adulyadej in this year, it should include the words, "This is a king who sacrificed himself for the benefit and happiness of all his people."
The preceding presentation was a paid program. The opinions, views and claims expressed were those of the program sponsors.